used to be more emotional when I was
Yeah.
younger. I would, if I got screwed over, I just wasn't able to control my emotions. My anger kind of took over. I mean, when I first got out of college, there was a college hockey team I was sideline reporting for, and weren't giving me as much airtime as I thought I deserved. I remember getting an email from them about how they're cutting back on my airtime more, and I was reading the email on my phone, and I was so angry that my like hand was shaking, and I like almost dropped my phone. So
Jeez.
I've become less of a sociopath since then. I've learned all these concepts like taking deep breaths, not headbutting walls, all these crazy
Wow.
ideas that I've learned. And I never actually headbutted a wall.
Sure. Okay. Uh-huh.
But but
I can
just
see a
learning,
hole
yeah,
back.
right, and learning how to stick up for yourself without being an asshole about it.
Yeah. Well, I
So
think, and this is a good segue, I guess, because it's Men's Mental Health Month, and
mhm.
I this episode is going to drop in a few days, and so I was very similar to you when I was younger, very reactive and not very responsive. I like to say now that I've got better control over my emotions, but I felt like kind of growing up, we weren't allowed to have, or I wasn't allowed to have emotions,
Right.
and I'm kind of just realizing that I'm actually a very sensitive person, even though I put on a tough outer layer. Like, I am kind of sensitive, and it's okay. And I used to cry quite a bit as a kid, be very emotional. And then when that didn't get, wasn't, what's the word I'm looking for, received well, I definitely, in like my teens and even in my 20s, I started just getting like really angry and frustrated and mean. And if someone would like screw me over, I would like plot revenge. And it would be not like I'm going to punch them in the face. It would be like I'm going to ruin their life. And it was like this like psychotic, sadistic sort of, and I'm being facetious with these words, but like I would be like, I'm going to ruin their life. And here's how I'm going to do it. And I'm going to play the long game. And it led me to this place where I was like such a victim mentality. Like, things were they were happening to me. I had bad luck, and I still joke about having bad luck because I do have bad luck, but I laugh about it now instead of thinking the world's out to get me. And so it is this like long path. And I feel like as men, and we all have our own story, but like as men, we're anger is almost like the most acceptable emotion when you're upset.
Very
And
true.
yeah, and that's like the weird thing that I think we almost need to, as a society and as men trying to, advocate in different ways for mental health, like we have to change that. Because even if you think about like sports, what do we do when our team loses? We get pissed off, right? It's like we
Right.
didn't even lose. Like, how do you think those guys that just lost the game, who dedicate their life to this, feel like they're the ones that have the right to have these kinds of emotions? So it's just kind of built into like some of the culture of men and the things that we care about. And let me tell you, I have gotten so mad at sports before. It's like silly to me. It's silly
Yeah.
how mad I get about it. So I choose nihilism, especially with Chicago teams, where I don't know when any of our teams are winning a championship anytime soon. But which, by the way, congratulations to the Celtics on
Yes. Celtics
clinching the
pulled it
finals.
off. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting. But what was it like for you growing up? And I know you've got an incredible story growing up, but what was it like for you growing up, and how was your experience kind of like shaping this person who ended up kind of being angry at things not going their way, to the point where you're like, iPhone is shaking with anger in your hands? And then I want to hear
Yeah.
after that. We'll start there, but I want to hear after that, like, what are the steps you took to overcome that and really change the way that you, uh, you know, behave in life?
Yeah. Well, I would say when it comes to if bad things happen to you, having people talk about a victim mentality, I think there's a middle ground where if something bad happens to you, it's natural to have some type of reaction and feel badly about it. And you are deserving of some level of sympathy, but you can also have perspective on what's going on in the world and how much worse other people have it. And so, I think you don't have to be on one extreme or the other where you just ignore your feelings about a bad situation or blow those feelings out of proportion and have a hissy fit. You can be irritated or upset or angry or frustrated within reason, but also keep things in perspective.
Right.
And realize how much harder so many people have it. I think for me, that's the kind of the middle ground I have is if bad things happen to me, have perspective on how much worse other people have it. But that doesn't mean that I have to ignore those feelings altogether.
Yeah, it doesn't like invalidate you, but
Right. And
it's
so,
perspective. That's a good point.
right. And so I would say that's kind of, but as far as, me having anger issues in the past, so it's actually very simple. I took an anger management class. And this was also like when I took the 6 months or so off from broadcasting full time. Like I worked a 9 to 5, but I worked with a therapist and took an anger management class and really worked on myself during that stretch. And part of why I took the anger management class was I had just gotten out of a somewhat unhealthy relationship with the girl I was dating, and there was never any physical abuse or violence in the relationships, but there was a lot of screaming on both sides, a lot of screaming at each other, a lot of verbal abuse on both sides,
Which is
and
also
yeah,
has its own toll on people. Like
right.
you,
And there was never any physical abuse in the relationship, but we both were verbally abusive with each other, and we both resolved our disagreements by screaming. And I just realized, to
which is a
navigate.
toxic pattern to just get stuck in.
Right.
It's very
One
easy to get
hundred
stuck in
percent.
that.
And I just kind of realized, in future relationships, to be able to navigate them successfully, I need to have better control over my emotions. So that was why I took an anger management class. So I mean, I took a class, and they talked about. I mean, they talked about how in the class they talked about how anger can be healthy. It becomes a problem when it's experienced or felt too deeply or expressed too often. And they talked about
Was
in
this like
certain
a group class or is this like a
yeah,
one-on-one?
it was like it
Okay.
was a group class. There was but it was like maybe like 4 people. It was online, so it was on like a Zoom call. There were like 4 other people in the class, and then an instructor, and everyone talked about their stories and the experiences that they'd had, and it was really helpful, and yeah, I mean, it's been a little while since I took that class, but and it's also, again, no one's going to go through life without ever getting angry, but it's dangerous when you don't have control of yourself,
Mm.
and you can get angry, but it becomes a problem when you start to lose control of yourself. And so yeah, I mean, that class was really helpful for me, and I also worked with a therapist a lot during that stretch, and it was a really helpful stretch for me to not only evaluate like what I wanted to do with my career, but like what I want to do with my life, and and who I was, and I learned a lot about myself during that stretch. But the short answer to your question is, how did I get better at controlling my anger? It was by getting help, and
Yeah.
going to an anger management class.
Which, as again, like men, it can be very challenging to to come to the conclusion that you need help. Then it's also challenging to go find the help and to then, on top of it, share your story like you're doing here and
Yeah.
sharing that journey for you, and then saying, "Hey, like I couldn't do it without help." That's just so difficult for so many men to be able to do, and I think